Quick thank you to the YouTube channels where I got some of these screenshots from Zach Scott Games. You got SkyPrince7774. You have Nintendo Central, Nintendo Unity, JFFRY95, Too Many Luigi 64, then Systematic Gaming, Video Game JN Poop, then Mixelli, then next up Raikou, Sophia Gaming, Sharan Mohan, then finally Pokemon Database, which is the first. This is a website. I'll link it in the description below. Hey, I know it's obvious, but I have a Pokemon profile picture and a name for the channel after a Pokemon, my favorite one. But I don't talk much about it, so here I am going to change that, especially since Pokemon Day is coming up soon. I want to be in the Pokemon spirit when they announce something. So I want to talk about Pokemon models, a very controversial topic. But okay, what isn't a controversial Pokemon topic nowadays? They're just like swimming it in nowadays. But I also want to throw my hat in the ring to get my take on both the positives and negatives. So strap in and let me explain how I'm going to do this video. The structure is simple. I'm going to separate the models / sprites into 3 eras. The first era, the sprites with no / lacking colors, with no battlefield in the battle, so Gen 1 through 2 on the Game Boy Advance and Game Boy. And middle eras where sprites are far more colorful and have battle / backgrounds in the fight. So basically Gen 3 through Gen 5. The 3D era is modern, 3D models with environments in the battle. And I will have 3 constant Pokemon from Gen 1 because that's where they all started, and they'll be the most likely to change throughout the beginning to the end. These 3 constant Pokemon I chose for Kanto are Pikachu because he is the main character Pokemon. He is the most likely to change throughout all the games. Charizard because he's a really popular Pokemon and also appears in like basically every game. And finally, Mewtwo, the legendary Pokemon. Now that everything's said and done, let's finally get this video started and talk about Pokemon models. First up, Generation 1 through 2 sprites. I'm going to start off with the positives and talk about the negatives. Man, bro, I'm talking about Kanto sprites. This is where it all started for Pokemon, for Game Freak. So they really had to make these sprites stand out. What did they do? Well, they just made some of them look really goofy. Well, let me explain. What is an example of a really goofy sprite? Simple, Golbat. I really like the way he looks. Like you have this giant tongue with saliva dripping down from it. I can interpret this as him being hungry. Then you also have this giant mouth that holds this giant tongue, which emphasizes how big his mouth is since he can hold it in there. And another thing I like about the big aspects about him, big wings, big tongue, big mouth, is how it contrasts with his little tiny eyes, which makes him look a little creepy. And then finally, another thing I really love about Golbat is the weird sideways stance he's doing. It's like, it really sells him as a weird Pokemon, and how weird the world of Pokemon it can be. And I'm gonna say this right now, I'm gonna sink on this ship. Golbat peaked here. Like, his red and blue design is phenomenal. I believe there is no other sprite or 3D model that comes close to this. What's another example of a goofy looking Pokemon? Well, Tentacruel. He has all these tentacles, but yet crosses his arm like a disappointed child in red and blue. I don't know why he does this, but still I think it's really cool. Like, I can easily interpret him being sassy the way he crosses his arm like this. Now, even though I am making a point to point out these goofy aspects about Pokemon, I just believe by looking at this full Pokédex video, right, of like both Gold and Silver, and then Red and Blue, these Pokemon were just really expressive. Like, a Pokemon that's not goofy but just really expressive is Blastoise in Pokemon Yellow. Like, look at this stance. This dude looks so hype with his claw open. He's looked like he's ready with the battle pose. He has this giant smile. Like, Pokemon this era are really expressive. But another thing I really like about Pokemon during the early eras, from what I did my research on, is how intimidating they look. Like going to Charizard sprite in Red and Blue, he looks scary here. Well, not like making me scream, but still, he looks intimidating here. Like, I like the big arms that he has with the smaller neck. Like, going to later generations, even Pokemon Yellow, right? They would make his arms look smaller. I believe the smaller arms make him look a little weaker. because these bulkier arms just look like he's physically stronger, so giving him skinnier arms make him look a little weaker to me. Then you have the neck. The old games didn't emphasize how long his neck was, but then you go on to a generation like Black and White, Gen 5, which his neck is much longer, like it's kind of bending over him and you can see his wings or his back. Now, I don't want to say the longer neck makes him look bad, no, I just think it makes him look less intimidating. But still, his sprite isn't bad here, and I think it's a pretty good one that makes him look intimidating. What's another intimidating sprite though is Gengar. Oh brother, this is where I believe the coloring of the early gens also helped Gengar here, because they weren't as bright as like later generations. Like for example, no, let me explain Gengar first, then I'm gonna go to my example, right? Gengar in Generation 2 Crystal, his design is so good, bro. I love the shadows on him with the really dark purple or deep purple, whichever one you want to go by. It helps his red eyes stand out more since they're a bit brighter. Then you have his bright white teeth. It just makes him look creepy with all these deep colors, even though you could just say he's standing there, but still, it's an effective design. I love it for how creepy he looks. Then you go to Generation 3 and they brighten him up, like the brighter colors are taking effect. And I'm not trying to say this sprite is bad, no, I just feel like he's less intimidating now because he's just much brighter. But yeah, that's all my positives I have to say for Johto and Kanto sprites. These sprites are pretty good. Like, I really like them. And even though I didn't mention it, I also want to point out Silver's Blastoise. This dude looks sick. I like how he's on all fours about to shoot his cannons. But now to some negatives I have for some of these sprites in the earlier days. On to my first piece of criticism for the old gen sprites. Now, I'm not going to be too long with this since this is early Pokemon and they were still trying to find their way with these games. So, of course, they're not going to have everything figured out. But this is my first criticism. Some of these sprites just look so weird or just unfinished. What is my example? Well, Delibird from Johto. Like you could see in gold and silver, he does have this little piece of hair. He has like this weird bald spot. But in Crystal, he then has this full lock of hair. Minor, I know, but still I want to go on. You have Mankey who looks furless here. But then you go to Pokemon Yellow and he has more fur here. Then finally, Machamp, or just... like, he looks off. I don't know what this thing looks like. But then you get onto a later generation like Pokemon Crystal or just Gold and Silver, and now he looks more refined here. Which isn't bad. They were still just trying to find their way with these Pokemon. But I still do want to point it out. What's my final piece of criticism for these sprites? Well, it's the fact that ever since Pokemon Yellow, if this full Pokemon X video is correct, they've been taking away some goofy elements from Pokemon ever since Pokemon Yellow. Like, for example, Golbat's not sticking his tongue out. And I'm not trying to say this sprite's bad, far from it, I think it looks good. But it just takes away that goofy aspect to me, which can give Golbat more personality. Next up is Tentacruel. He's not crossing his arms anymore. And for my final piece of evidence to like hammer it home a little more is Exeggutor. They made his eggs a little smaller, or seeds, whatever you want to call them. But yeah, this isn't bad, like I said before in my previous criticism. They're just trying to figure out what they want to do with these Pokemon. And if making them less goofy is the thing they want to do, then that's fine. I'm not mad at it. I just feel like some Pokemon do suffer from this a little. But hey, it's not that bad. Alright, Gen 3 through 5 sprites, the middle era of Pokemon. This era did a lot of good. One of my first praises is the colors. Pokemon are bright, and that's great. Look at Pikachu, for instance. While yes, he has color in Crystal, and he sports a much brighter look here. They removed the shading that made Pikachu look gold, and now he looks more yellow, along with his red cheeks being darker. I believe the brighter colors, mostly his yellow skin, sells Pikachu's Q factor more. It also helps with the sprite, with his feet up in the air, then you have his arms wide open with that jolly big smile. It looks adorable. And they will continue to improve the colors up until Unova, to where, look at Mewtwo for instance, one of our constant Pokemon that I haven't mentioned yet, but Mewtwo looks nice here. In Gen 3 Hoenn, he looked a little lighter with his tail especially, like he has these white lines on it,
But Unova, they would darken his tail a little more, and I also believe his skin. I know they removed the like white lines off his tail to make it look darker, so that's good. And I believe this makes Mewtwo look cooler. Another Pokemon that I believe looks cool because of darker colors is Charizard. Now, I want to say this right now. I believe Charizard was more intimidating in the older games because of some of the sprites, but I believe this Charizard looks cooler because of the darker colors he has. I love the deep orange. Well, not deep orange, dark orange with the blue wings that he has, or the innards. Like, it looks cool. Like, colors can sell cute or cool factors, which I believe they did a good job in. And another praise that I have is mostly for Gen 5, but still, this is weird to include since I believe this is more of animations, but I should still bring it up. Pokemon in Black and White, and also Black and White 2, are energetic because of their sprite animations, which help them look alive. Like, for example, Herdier, hopefully I'm saying that name right, who bounces up and down, but later on in his sprite animation, he stretches down, wagging his ears and tail. It's cute. Lilligant is another example that I want to bring up. Also, she was on my black team. Not black team, I played Pokemon White. My Pokemon White team. Lilligant bounces up and down a little, but later on during her sprite animations, she holds her leaf hands together, making her look a little graceful, and that's cute, which adds personality to her, showing a little bit of a docile side, you can say. Black Huron, bro. Black Huron's sprite animation is awesome. I'm gonna go this little by little to show you how cool it is. He moves his arms down, pushing them to the ground. As he charges energy, you see his tail flash white and the wires on his body flashing white as well. Then he raises his body just to slam his arms down again, just for the Zekrom side to flash too. It's so cool. It's just a cool sprite animation in general. I love it. You get the point what I'm trying to make. I believe the movements in the sprite animations help the Pokemon look alive, which that's the main thing I want from these creatures, to know their biology and to see them act like animals mid-fight. It's helped sell Pokemon. But that's all for my positives. On to some criticisms, or negatives. Now onto my first criticism for the 2000 era sprites. This one's pretty minor because the era uncovering has the most changes and does get fixed in a later game, but I'm still going to bring it up because I feel like it should be mentioned. My first minor issue is the back sprites of the early era. Some of them are just really bad and don't properly capture the Pokemon in size. For example, Ho-Oh, this beautiful rainbow bird. You wanna know what his back sprite looks like? You know what, I don't have to ask you. Yeah, it looks like this. It's really bad. You don't see the wings that he has that make him look beautiful. He has this mouth open like this, which makes him look a little goofy with some feathers on the side. It just looks weird. Kyogre's another terrible one. You don't see his arms, you don't see his fins. You just see like his two back spikes, and yeah, that's it. It's pretty bad for a god of the sea. Then finally Snorlax, which isn't as bad as like Kyogre or Ho-Oh, but you don't see his really big body. You see his head and like some of his body at least, but when you see Snorlax, you're meant to see like this big fat Pokemon, and with his back sprite, you don't properly capture that. But like I said, I don't want to rag on this issue too much since Gen 5 fixes this by zooming out the camera more, and you get much better shots of these Pokemon. Like, let's go back to Ho-Oh for example. This is what he looks like now. You get to see these beautiful parts of this bird. Like, you see the back feathers, these giant wings. Like, it's really nice. I guess you don't see his face, but still, we can't have everything. I still think the back sprite looks nice. But on to an actual issue I have with Gen 5 sprites. My next and final issue for this middle era sprites is mostly for Gen 5, and it's the fact that the problems in the modern 3D era were here, and it looks like Black and White were the signs of what's to come. What do I mean by that? Well, it's simple. Sprites with no personality and just standing there and bobbing. I have 3 Pokemon I want to point out for this example. First up, Tyranitar. Look at his Gen 3 sprite. Look at the aura, the pose. It makes him look fierce and scary. A bit cool too. Now let's go to Gen 5 and... yeah, they kind of massacred my boy. But yeah, the sprite is just gone, like the pose is gone. Replaced with Ty just standing there. His sprite animation isn't nothing special, it's just him bobbing. I can't really interpret a personality from him. Maybe he's aggressive, but still, it doesn't change that the model is a downgrade. I just don't like it. Next up is Umbreon, and this one hurts me a little because I used Umbreon on my Black 2 team, well, recently after I replayed it. But yes, Umbreon is another Pokemon I want to point out, where this Pokemon is just standing there bobbing up and down, and I can't really interpret a personality from it. I guess I could say he's serious, but nothing really. And that doesn't help with Umbreon's sprite animation also being a little lackluster. His ears and tails are moving pretty fast, so which makes him look energetic, which is pretty cool. And I want to praise that, but I already praised it in my, praise section for this era. But it doesn't change the fact that he's just bouncing around in a boring stance doing nothing. And finally, Zekrom. Oh, this one hurts my inner child. Zekrom fans, stand up, because yes, our GOAT Zekrom, his sprite sucks, and I want to make a clear distinction why I never noticed this until doing research for this video. Zekrom himself looks cool. I love the black dragon, bro. He looks awesome, but his sprite just sucks. I literally can't interpret anything from his personality with this sprite. He is just standing there looking serious. Yeah, he's cool, but what does this stance say about Zekrom as a character? Because I don't just want this Pokemon to just be posed up like a model. I want their sprites to say something. And that's all this sprite has going for him, that Zekrom just looks cool. I don't want to keep harping on this, but he looks like an aura farmer. Like, seriously, I'm gonna play Sin City, and tell me you can't.
Sin City wasn't made for you.
Apologies, I just wanted to make that quick joke, but jokes aside, right? That's my main issue with Zekrom's sprite, that it does nothing. I guess I could say the sprite animations are fine at best. Okay, I like the part where Zekrom, when he's idle for a long time, he starts flashing blue. You could say he's charging up his lightning, which I think is kinda cool. His tail moves around a lot, but still, his sprite animations aren't even that good to carry him out of this ditch. It's not every sprite needs to be crazy and say a lot about a Pokemon. For example, Mewtwo in Gen 5, I think his sprite isn't doing too much. I don't even think it says much about his personality, but still, I think it's weird enough to be okay, that's at least stands out. No, Zekrom's doesn't even stand out because I just pointed out 2 other Pokemon that just stand there. And then you have the same issue with Reshiram, but I don't want to get on Reshiram too hard since it's basically all the criticism I have for Zekrom, just except for the sprite animation with lightning is just fire now. But yeah, the issues were already here and just signs of what to come. But since I pointed out the issues here, it's time to go on to the 3D era.
Alright, on to the 3D era. You know the deal by now. Starting off with the positives, then going on to the negatives. My first praise in the 3D era is some of the battle animations for Pokemon, because it shows how they would fight according to their biology. Take for example Pikachu. When he uses an electric attack, you can see his cheeks glow, showing that he's releasing electricity from his cheek pouches. The fact that this is said in Pokédex entries, and you see this in actual combat is pretty cool. Then next up, my boy, Koraidon. Take a stand, bro. Listen, he's my favorite Pokemon. He's in the 3D era, so you know I had to do this. But yes, going to Koraidon's signature move, Collision Course, Koraidon roars. I don't know why he does this. You can interpret a personality from this saying, oh, maybe he's trying to hype himself up for the attack. Or maybe he has to roar for the attack to go off, which, would be weird. Or the simple option, hey, the devs thought this would be cool. And that's the option I'm going with right now. The devs thought it was cool. But the fact that he roars is pretty interesting. And then the next part is really cool. To show his physical strength, he breaks the ground under him. This is really cool to sell how strong this Pokemon is. The fact that him just doing these simple actions like jumping breaks the ground. Then finally, this one's a little special for how simple it is, but Torchic. When you select Torchic in Alpha Sapphire and Omega Ruby, using the Scratch attack, Torchic jumps up in the air, which is pretty cool since he does have arms to attack with, showing that they need to jump to use their talents. They scratch down, and you can say they're a little inexperienced, but they have to run back to the battle spot because of this, showing that they can't position themselves properly. Even if you don't take that interpretation, I just like the animation. It shows Torchic being pretty energetic running back to the battle spot. But yeah, that's enough of my praises for some of the battle animations. My next praise for the 3D era is mostly coming from Scarlet and Violet, but I just love it so much I had to bring it up. And I believe it should be expanded upon in every other future game. And it's the fact that certain Pokemon, mostly flying Pokemon, have dual animations to where they're either on the ground, like Charizard for instance, like he's on the ground here, but now he's in the air. It's so cool, like you can interpret a personality from this, like hey, maybe they want to fight fair, like a flying Pokemon air to air, or maybe like they want to have an advantage in combat. Either way, it's still cool that they took the time to implement this. Other examples are Decidueye, he's on the ground here, and now he's in the air. And one that I really like is Screamtail, because Jigglypuff is sometimes referred to as the balloon Pokemon, so the fact that its past variant had this way back then is interesting for Jigglypuff's biology. And this one's a fun one, but Delibird, the fact that he's just flapping with one wing to carry his sack, it's adorable. Well, now on to my criticisms. My first criticism for the 3D era Pokemon is the fact that some of the idle animations are pretty bad because the Pokemon's just standing there doing nothing, or their 3D model has no personality to it. Now, with the 3D models of Pokemon trying to make them look more realistic, you can't just have them stand there. It's gonna look pretty jarring. You want to sell me these creatures being alive. Now, going back to what I said, the 3D models being more realistic, I can't just say that. I have to explain myself. Why do I believe this? Well, look at the pictures of the two Pikachu here. The Pikachu on the left is the 3D one. You see how smooth it is. You don't see these uneven lines on the Pikachu on the right, the 2D one, towards like some of these lines are uneven. And Pikachu on the left, right, has more defined line art with like its cheeks on its arms and stuff. I'm gonna zoom in on it to emphasize my point. And just like Generation 5, the 3D Pokemon moves, so they want to sell you these creatures being alive. Now, what is my first example of an awkward looking Pokemon, or bad idle animation? Swellow. Swellow's a Pokemon I believe that has a terrible idle animation. I think its model's fine, but it's just standing there, gliding. No wing movements and no head movements. It's just jarring to see. I wish they made its wings flap a little. The next Pokemon I would like to bring up is Gyarados. I believe his model and idle animation's fine. It doesn't look that bad. But I just feel like his 3D model just doesn't have that much personality to it. Like, he just looks pretty boring and not as intimidating as like previous sprites. Like, go to Heart Gold and Soul Silver for instance, to where it's like he's actually on the ground, wrapped up a little, looking down at you to emphasize how long he is. Then you also have the fact that his Platinum sprite is very similar to his 3D model, but you have the fact where it's like, okay, his head's like slightly pointed downwards to emphasize he's looking down on you. It's pretty cool. It makes him look a little intimidating. This is just like, I wish they lowered his head a little more to have it to where it's like he's looking down at you or something. It's not that bad of a model. I just feel like the personality is just not there. And finally, Marshtomp. Marshtomp is a terrible 3D model. I'm sorry, bro. Like, he just looks ugly. Now, listen, I'm gonna be a hater real quick. Marshtomp just looks ugly in general, but the 3D does not help him. Like, go to like Generation 3. Look at Marshtomp's sprite here. He's all happy. He got his arms up in the air. Now, the 3D sprite, he just looks so disappointed, bro. Like, his arms aren't in the air and he doesn't look that happy. So it's just disappointing to see a Pokemon that was kind of cute in, like, previous generations just lose its personality in this model. But that's all the criticism I have for today. My final piece of criticism is going to include all three of the constant Pokemon, just to see the change over the years, and this is my final criticism for the video before I go on to my final thoughts. My final criticism is the fact that they don't really change their 3D models and just reuse them a lot. Unlike the 2D sprites, to where it's like, while yes they did reuse some, they always at least try to change them up a little. Like, let's go to Pikachu first. This is Pikachu throughout Generation 3, 4, and 5. Now yes, they reuse 4 for Generation 5, right? But there's at least Heart Gold there to like break it up a little. His sprite's different here. Now go to Pikachu in like X and Y, Sun and Moon, and Scarlet and Violet. And his model's practically the same. Like, there's no experimentation here making his sprite look different. No, he's just the same guy. Let's go to Charizard next. Like, Charizard's somewhat saved by this because he has like that flying and grounded animation. But Charizard throughout X and Y, Sun and Moon, and like Scarlet and Violet, he looks practically the same. But then go to like the 2D era to where it's like, alright, you got Charizard in Generation 3, Generation 4, and Generation 5. Generation 4 and 5, they're similar, right? But you at least have Generation 3. Then finally Mewtwo, same deal here. He has the same sprites in Generation 4 and 5, but it's broken up by like Generation 3 to where they try to experiment a little, and Generation 4 and 5 is just the final result, really. And then also you have Heart Gold in the middle, but then Mewtwo in the 3D era games, to where it's like, hey, he's practically the same throughout all of them. Now, I don't mind them just reusing stuff, it's fine, but I miss when they experimented a little, changing things up. But with that, that's my final piece of criticism. Let's go on to my final thoughts. With that all being said and done, before I get on to my final thoughts about these Pokemon models / sprites, I would like to say this video was annoying to edit, but that's mostly my fault because I was procrastinating. As I said in the intro, this was made for Pokemon Day, and we are far, far, far away from Pokemon Day. So don't expect any other screenshot cuts, it's just going to be this cute little Koraidon plushie talking to you. Now on to my final feelings about these Pokemon models / sprites, and I have to say, no matter how annoying this video was to edit, it was fun doing the research for this stuff. Like, I wasn't born in the early era of Pokemon, so the fact that I had to do some research on these older sprites that I've never seen before, like Charizard, Blastoise, and Golbat, was so awesome. And it made me appreciate what they did in the beginning to get here. Like Golbat, for instance. Even though I feel like he downgraded, it's fun to see how they experimented with him throughout the generations. But seriously, Golbat peaked in Red and Blue. Give him his big goofy tongue back. But then I had to go on to games I played before, like Black and White and X and Y, and break down what did I like about some of these sprites and models. Like Zekrom. It was hard to say it, but his sprite sucks and I don't like it. I'm not looking at it through like my nostalgia now. I'm looking at it through like, I gotta break this down and figure out what do I like about it. And that was another fun part, to dig deep in my feelings and think about it. And it was also fun to see how they improved on some things. Like, for example, that I brought up, Ho-Oh's Heart Gold and Soul Silver back sprite. It was terrible. But in Black and White, in Black and White 2, they improved it by zooming out the camera more. That was cool. And finally, the 3D era, which I will say this right now is my favorite era, even though just like every other era, it has its flaws with like the reused models, and I feel like some of the Pokemon do lack personality or just don't have good 3D models, like Marshtomp for instance. I'm a bigger fan of what they do there with some of the battle animations, like with Pikachu using an electric attack and you see his cheeks glow. Or there are just some Pokemon models that I believe look just as good as sprites. Now, I can't really mention them during this video since 1, I'm not really going to edit anything here, and 2, I couldn't really bring them out during the video, but models like Greninja, to where he's posed like an actual ninja with his hands out and him crouching on the ground, that's really cool. Mousehold is another good one, and Koraidon, of course I gotta bring him up, favorite Pokemon. That was cool to see. Just what I learned throughout this video is that Pokemon consistently take some few steps forward but some steps backwards, and this is constant throughout everything, even throughout my favorite generation or models being like 3D era. But that's all I have to say really. Just have a good day and enjoy your Pokemon.